Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Lloyd and I source cars for people on a professional basis. Although most of the cars I source are between £1,000 and £5,000, very often I've been asked to show something a little bit cheaper on the channel, and so I came up with No Budget Reviews, the series where we look at cars that you can buy in good condition with an MOT for under £1,000 and you can enjoy driving. We don't film this in an expensive manner, we don't use separate microphones, we don't use dual head tripods, we don't even use a DSLR, but we do have a lot of fun. As is my wont when I'm in the area of Stratford-upon-Avon, I am filming a very, very nice 2004 MG ZR 120. I think this is actually a 120 plus, although because these cars don't actually have any of that badging on them, I'm just going to have to say that that's what it is. It's owned by a gentleman by the name of Byron, who I met at the MG40 event, which was held relatively close to here actually, a place called Toddington, which is actually in Gloucestershire. The MG ZR has quite a lengthy history behind it. There are elements of this car that date back to the late 1980s, when Rover went into development with Honda on a car called the Rover 200 and then later the 400, which we know within the sort of Rover community as the R8 series of Rover 200 and 400s, because there were also another series of Rover 200 and 400s, and even before that there'd been a car called the Rover 213 and 216, which was based on the Honda Ballard of the time, the 1980s, so we tend to call them the R8s. This car does actually have some elements in common with the R8s. The door handles are exactly the same actually. You could just swap these over if you really wanted to. Also, the entire front structure of the car is the same. When they went into partnership with Honda on the R8, they actually used a lot of elements from the contemporary Civics. I think that was a 4th generation Civic, but the version of it they used was called the Honda Concerto. In 1995, the 2nd generation car came out. The 200 and 400 were very separated after that, and the 200 R3 was born, which was an R8 reclothed and given the rear suspension from a Maestro, or a modified version of it I should say, and that means the entire front structure of this car is still really similar to the old R8s and the R3s, of course, which came before that. So if we will lift the bonnet, we'll see, you know, something that looks very familiar. Even like the heater, I think, is the same as one of the old R8s. The R3 was made from 1995 to 1999. I have had 2 of those on my channel, but I used to own one. But in late 1999, the Rover Group, as it still was at the time, brought up to 25, which was a heavily facelifted 200 R3, because there'd been quite a few criticisms of the car in terms of, you know, for the size of the car, the rear space wasn't particularly good, and it was a bit too expensive, because originally that was designed to take on things like the Ford Escort as the and the Focus, as the R8 had done, taking on the Escort, Astra, that sort of stuff. So one thing we can see from the design of the R3 back in 1995 is the boot, which in this facelifted ZR is accessed by the Pectron remote, which we'll have to talk about later. It's got some sort of camping chairs in here, which are for going to shows and stuff. This car does go to a lot of shows. MG Road Fanatics, of course, we'll just move that out of the way as well. We'll lift the carpet in here. You can see it's rather a big boot for the time. It's certainly bigger than something like a Fiesta or a Polo would have been in the early 2000s, I think. And we've got a full-size spare wheel in there, which is very nice. Yeah, do not leave this key in the boot. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. The earlier ZRs from 2001 to 2004, I think it was April 2004 this facelift came out, have a different way of getting into the boot. They don't have just that, which is why they thought that was a great idea. I don't know. But with the 25, the sporty version of that, which is called the 25 GTI, before that there'd been the 200 VI and the 200 BRM. They all had a 1.8K series generating 143 horsepower. That was replaced after MG Rover's formation in 2000, because obviously Rover went a bit bankrupt and was sold by NW owned them for £10 to the Phoenix Consortium. They decided that they needed something to revive the MG name, and they introduced this to sell alongside the 25, the ZR in 2001. As mentioned before, this is a facelifted one. These lasted from about April 2004 right away to the demise of MG Rover in April 2005. So we'll have a seat in the back. First of all, we'll just show that really in comparison to like an Escort or an Astra, when they came up with this body shell in 1995, it's really not the most spacious car. I mean, for a car that's in the Polo Fiesta class, it's actually pretty big, but in comparison with an Escort or an Astra, I'm afraid it's not much good really. It's not the most amount of room in here. Headroom's sort of all right. You can kind of cope with that. I'm only 5'11", I'm not particularly tall, but it's okay for sort of children and things or short journeys. And you know, if you've got a little Morris spare down there, you don't actually need to worry about that sort of thing because he sits in a cubby hole at the front. But there's no sort of cubby holes in here, and these unfortunately do come off, as you'll see on the driver's door, which is a shame. This is the rare leather interior option, but most of them didn't come like this, which is a bit of a shame, but there we go. One thing that is nice in these, they do have 3-point seat belts in the middle if you want to sort of fit child seats and things like that. You are carrying younger members of the family in these. So yeah, headroom's okay, legroom not so much, but then again, it really wasn't designed initially, this car, to actually be the most spacious in the back. So we've actually got a Jan Speed exhaust on this, which is pretty special. There's loads of other little modifications to this as well, such as these wheels, which are actually off a Streetwise, which again was a variation on the Rover 25, like this is. We can see Byron's very kindly put there the colour of the car, which is a Firefrost red. It's not Night Fire red, it's slightly different from that. Open up these door handles, also shared with the Freelander and all sorts of other things. Another thing shared with lots of other cars was this mirror switch, which went into everything from the sort of Montegos and the Maestros to the MG X-Power SV, if you can believe that. But that was around for a long time. These stalks were actually different from the earlier ones, which were very much sort of Honda derived. They feel a lot better. They were introduced in 2004 and they are an improvement. Something else that's been put into this car as well is heater vents from a Rover 45 facelift, which I used to own. I don't know quite why that has been done, but that's fine. The insert here is actually from a Rover 25 facelift as well. It's called Black Oak. It's not real wood or anything, but I like it, viewers. It's got air conditioning in this car and front fog lamps, which is good. There is the door locking button. It's a facelifted car, and we can see here as well, got a glove box which I shall not be fitting my secret mission documents in because there is no room. This dashboard also allowed passenger airbag fit, but this car doesn't have one, which is really strange. But this is actually a steering wheel off an MGTF. You can fit them. They do require a bit of modification, but Byron's put one on. This gearbox is actually the PG1 gearbox. It's a Honda derived gearbox. One of the things like the Montego and the Maestro, and it's something in the 80s, and all the way right through to the end of MG Rover in 2005, same gearbox as an MG ZS 180. Now the lower specification cars with the 1.4 engines actually used two gearboxes, the R65 gearbox until 2003, and then the Ford IB5 gearbox after that. The R65s aren't my favourite gearbox. Low mileage ones are really good. When they get a bit baggy and high mileage, then they get a bit sort of rubbish. Ford IB5s are a little bit better, but the PG1s I think just my favourite. This one's got quite a long throw on it, as you can see. It's a very long throw for a sporty car, and also in these cars, just like the R3 200s and the 25s, there's a cable clutch, and so the pedals don't quite kind of line up, which is a little bit of a shame. I find my own position a little bit compromised in these for somebody like me, but this one actually with these nice leather seats does seem okay. As you can see, sometimes bits of trim do fall off. You've got to bear in mind this car dates from 2004. It's 18 years old, and so you kind of expect that sort of thing. And it's even got a little clock there in the middle, which looks suspiciously like the one off the old R8 200s. Well, these dials do remind you very much you're in an MG. Electric window switches are down here as they were on the R3 200. I can't remember actually if you could get electric windows in any ZR, to be honest. I like these dials here. I'm not sure there was a climate control panel available for these cars. Aftermarket stereo, which is sensible, you know, aux input and all that sort of stuff. And yes, just a very kind of basic by modern standards looking at this door panel, but by the end of time that's not too bad actually. Right, let's take a look at the engine. Well, viewers, we've got a bit of a non-standard engine bay going on here. Throttle body in this car is actually from an MG TF 135, so we get a little bit more throttle response in this. Standard, this engine's about 118 horsepower. It might be slightly different with that throttle body, I don't know. But we've got hydraulic bonnet struts, which is a common conversion for these. You can see there is standard one just there, but that's a pain, so we don't use that. And bits of sort of air filters have been changed and all that sort of thing. We've got a battery cover here. There's the ABS pump, by the way. It is quite a big one. And the coolant reservoir, why? It's the same one as on the good old R8s. Of course it is, and in fact, as I said, the front structure of this car is virtually the same. So we've got McPherson struts at the front and that modified Maestro rear end. And actually Maestros do handle quite well. So it's not really a sort of kind of kiss of death of a fun factor in this car. Bear in mind as well that these cars were fully polybushed from the factory, 20mm lower, and have bigger brakes than the 25. So 25s and R3s do handle really well. Like the one I drove, actually on No Budget Reviews about 2 years ago, which belongs to Mr. Curry, whose many cars you would have seen on my channel. Considering what he paid for it, which was like the bottom end of No Budget Reviews money, that drove really well. And of course this drives a lot better. Right, in fact, let's stop talking and start driving, shall we? Lloyd Young Consulting stickers, t-shirts and mugs are available by clicking the link to the Google form in the video description below. You can tell within the first few yards that this car just wants to go. It doesn't really want to sort of potter around all the time. The engine's perfectly civilised. I mean, they use this in things like the Rover 75, so it's not as if it's the least refined engine ever, but because this car's got that, I think it's got a pipe across air filter and the jam speed exhaust on it, it's not really the last word in refinement. It's more the last word in sporty engine note for a modest car like this. The suspension, despite the fact it has been polybushed and that's how they came, is actually alright. It seems to deal reasonably well with bumps and things like that. I have driven one of these before. It was a ZR 105 trophy model last year, and that wasn't too bad either. See, a 25 would be slightly softer than this. Street-wise, I don't know. I've never driven one of those. The engine options available in a ZR were that was 1.4 that's in the ZR 105, which actually generates about 103 horsepower. I've had different people say different things about that, but back in the day, the K series from about 1993 onwards was 103 horsepower in 1.44. That's what we always used to say. ZR120 like this has a 1.8 litre engine, also shared with lots of other cars, but the Rev 75 is probably the most famous one in many ways. This generates 118 horsepower, something like that. If you wanted a bit more power though, you could go for the crazy VVC model. Window up, there we go. That generated 158 horsepower, ZR160, and you do see those on the back. They are generally badged as 160s. But this feels very lively in a car like this. I think 0 to 60 is about 8.5 seconds in this. And the gearbox, despite this long throw and this cable clutch in it, which always seems to need adjustment, it's pretty good. Found some sort of slightly faster roads to test this out on, and I'm very glad that I have, because it's performing exceptionally well viewed. The steering is really good. Not so in a driving position, I've said before, but the steering and handling of this is just so well judged. I mean, when they developed the sort of underneath of this car between 1989 and 1995, originally for the R8 and then the R3, I think they kind of did know what they were doing. And then it was tweaked further in 99 and 2001, and this is an ultimate version of this chassis. And wow, it's really good. The performance of this car is actually remarkably quick. I'm going to have to be a tiny bit careful, I think, as to what we enjoy ourselves doing today, shall we say. So yes, those are the ones that we can talk about. But how do I put this? There was another type of ZR that was sold, and it had a 2-litre forbidden fuel engine. But as usual, due to controversial government legislation and many other reasons, we don't talk about diesels on this channel. What we do talk about, viewers, is some of the trim levels that were available on the ZR. Most of the time, there were just 2 trim levels available. It was something like ZR 105 and then ZR 105 Plus. The 160 didn't actually have a plus trim level, it just came as 160. The special editions were the Atomics, which was on the pre-facelift cars. Then the Trophy and Trophy SEs, which were on the facelifted cars like this in 2005. They were much better equipped actually than the standard and the plus models. So yes, that's why a lot of people went for them. It's just a joy to drive it. I can see why in the sales charts when these were out, they were frequently Britain's best-selling hot hatch. I understand that. This seat is a bit more comfortable than the ones which were in my old R3 200 back in the day, and so it is for me a much better experience than one of those. I'm not so bothered by the fact that the steering wheel is very low and this really long travel on the clutches, just the way that they are. You can adjust the clutches actually, because they're cable clutches, you can adjust them. But it's just a really good fun car. You can place it exactly where you want. This PG1 gearbox is really good. There was an automatic actually available on the 120, which was called the Step Speed, I believe. That was the same one as used in the 45 and all sorts of other different models as well. Yes, it's an absolute delight. I'm really blessed to actually have had a go in this. I mean, I loved Mr. Dunlop's ZR105 that I drove last year, the 3-door. It was I think a Trophy, right outside Longbridge. But this is just a little bit more powerful, it's a little bit lower mileage, his 105 is now sold and he's got a 160, so he obviously really likes them, and his is a really nice example. One of these days maybe he'll let me have a go in that, I don't know, but there we go. So yes, MG ZR, really good fun little cars, and at the moment you can pick up one for under £1,000 still. I don't know how much it will continue. It'll be quite a rough one if you do. This one's worth considerably more than that, I think. So just bear that in mind when you go shopping for a little slice of MG branded fun. So viewers, the MG ZR, is this a car which you should consider with your hard-earned budget up to £1,000? Well, I don't see why not. If this is more your persuasion, you are more of a sporty persuasion than the luxury persuasion, then this will be exactly for you. They still don't cost an awful lot of money. You can pick these up for under £1,000, as we demonstrated actually last year. Won't be for everybody, of course. Not everybody wants a sort of car with a body kit on it and you know, poly bushes and things like that, but it's still a lot of fun. Just make sure that you check your car over carefully before you buy it, if you are wanting a ZR. Anyway, thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching this episode of No Budget Reviews. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video and leave a comment below, and we shall see you again soon for more low-cost motoring.